Ladies and gentlemen, the Philly Kroc Jazz Orchestra.
We are the Philly Kroc Jazz Orchestra, and thank you all very much for coming out this evening. That first number you heard was Amazing Grace, and of course the unmistakable Benny Goodman classic, Sing, Sing, Sing. So a little bit about this program this evening before we actually get started into the meat of things. Tonight's program is all about education. This month is Jazz Appreciation Month, and in honor of Jazz Appreciation Month, we decided to pay homage to what really started off the whole jazz movement, the big band era. Of course, you had Dixieland, you had a whole lot of other things happening in speakeasies, but really, it wasn't until the swing era during World War II that we actually saw a step towards jazz music being popular, as it were. So tonight, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go from the early 1930s all the way up until the late 1940s. About 47 is where we're gonna stop. And we're gonna examine some of the key influences of this time period. So the first one we had was Benny Goodman. And just a little bit of information about Benny Goodman. So like I said, we began the program with acknowledging one of the first to pioneer the integration of races and colors onto the bandstand, Benny Goodman. He was a white Jewish clarinetist who was raised in Chicago, Illinois, in a very poor household. Goodman grew up learning to play music in his local synagogue and later turned his ear to jazz stylings of such people like Johnny Dodds and Jimmy Noon. After having a successful outings as both a musician and businessman, Goodman was hired by NBC to host the Let's Dance program that featured various styles of dance music. Well, in need of purchasing new arrangements, Goodman then acquired arrangements from the once heavily renowned but now bankrupt, due to many different reasons, Fletcher Henderson, putting together a book of creative and innovative music for that time period. It was in Los Angeles at the Palomar Ballroom on August 21st in 1935 that the course of music history would change. That night, Benny Goodman performed a live concert, and at that point in time, a lot of his music was very sweet and very, how can I put it, lovey-dovey, as it were. So they decided, you know what, if we're gonna go out onto the bandstand and we're playing on a live show at a later time, much later than we actually anticipated, why not just play the music that we love? So, lo and behold, that's what ended up happening. So the first tune, like I said, you heard this evening was the famous 1935 arrangement of Sing, 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 that at the time featured one of the greatest drummers of the swing period, Gene Krupa. The next song that we will be performing is a reimagining of a popular Yiddish tune entitled Bei mir bist du schön, featuring our very talented vocalist, Miss Nikki Paulino. Bei mir bist du schön.
Benny Carter was born in Harlem on August 8, 1907, as the youngest of 6 children and the only boy of his family. By age 15, even though he was mostly self-taught to that point, Carter was sitting in at some of the hottest clubs in Harlem. Carter quickly earned a reputation and was highly sought after as a sideman for some of New York's most prominent bands, having first recorded and also arranging for most of the charts on the 1928 recording sessions for Charlie Johnson's orchestra. Carter would then go on to form his own band and was then writing and arranging all of the charts for his own group. By this point in time, Carter had been creating a name for himself across the jazz landscape as one of the top innovators for writing arrangements and would later become swing standards. Compared to Ellington, Carter wrote simpler harmonies, much less counterpoint, and standard brass versus reed scoring with less complicated rhythms. The idiomatic sax soli in this particular piece really makes it swing. Symphony and Riffs, which was originally composed in 1935 for 4 reeds and 5 brass, was later rescored for a larger ensemble. It demonstrates all of these properties, serving as a transitional piece, between the pre-swing music of the 1920s and the mid-30s swing. You will most certainly see many of the key influences that his style of writing had upon the forthcoming composers and arrangers. Benny Carter would go on to become a renowned teacher, even spending a semester at Princeton teaching jazz studies. He was a prolific alto saxophonist and also played clarinet and trumpet, in addition to composing and arranging for his own big band and other bands of the day, creating a long and decorated career and recording in 8 different decades. Artie Shaw Arshawski was born on May 23, 1910 in New York City to a dressmaker and photographer from Austria and Russia. Shaw grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, where he originally started his musical explorations on saxophone, which he paid for by working at a local grocery store when he was only 13. By the age of 16, Shaw had switched to clarinet, began going on tour, and filled in as a session musician at every opportunity. Shaw then took a job in Cleveland, arranging for and writing for Austin Wiley, where he was exposed to symphonic music, which would play a key role in the birth of third stream music, a blend of classical or traditional elements and jazz. After being noticed at a swing concert in New York City at the Imperial Theater, Shaw went on to form his own big band, gaining national fame with hits like Stardust, Begin the Begin, Moonglow, and Back Bay Shuffle. Despite being a well-received ensemble, Shaw's band would dissolve due to the sound not being commercialized. Being more interested in fusing different genres of music, Shaw moved on to incorporating strings with his arrangements and dabbling in the bebop movement as well. His use of unusual instrumentation and experimental style of writing would credit Shaw as an innovator of the big band idiom. Cole Porter originally wrote Begin the Begin, but gained little popularity until Shaw arranged it and recorded it in 1938. Shaw extended the swing section in collaboration with his arranger, Jerry Gray. In spite of RCA releasing the song on the B-side of the album, Indian Love Call, Shaw's persistence paid off when Begin the Begin became a best-selling record in 1938, peaking at number 3. The recording became one of the most famous and popular anthems of the entire swing era, after which time it was featured in the MGM film Broadway Melody of 1940, starring Fred Astaire and Eleanor Powell. Soon after, nearly every big band recorded it, as well as Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald. To be performed next is Benny Carter's Symphony and Riffs, followed by Artie Shaw's Begin the Begin.
Hello. So I get the pleasure of telling you about Count Basie and Chick Webb and Ella Fitzgerald, which are going to be the next two tunes that we play. So Count Basie is probably one of the most well-known names in big band jazz. He was born not too far from Philadelphia in Red Bank, New Jersey, and he started as a piano accompanist in the vaudeville circuit. So he used to play for acts, jugglers, singers, like whatever that would come on. And he even played for silent movies. Can you imagine Count Basie playing for silent movies on an organ, trying to follow like what was going on? That's what he was doing as a young man. He relocated to Kansas City, where he would eventually join the Benny Moten Big Band, which was a very well-known band at the time. And from that band, he formed his own band, which was originally called the Barons of Rhythm. And then it wasn't until he moved back to New York City from Kansas City that same band changed its name to the Count Basie Orchestra, and he became the featured person. His band was known for soulful, blues-oriented music that typically emphasized a relaxed swing in the rhythm section, supported by his very understated piano playing, almost minimalistic piano playing, and a very powerful horn section in contrast. This combination separated his music from the less emotional but popular quote-unquote swing music of the day. And indeed, notwithstanding that a broadcaster was the one who first named Basie the Count, Count Basie, many music lovers of his day considered him to be the real king of swing. The Count Basie Orchestra was both popular, it had a lot of critical acclaim, and it became very known for their distinctively strong groove. And it was one of the most foundational big bands in the 30s and the 40s. It featured a long list of very premier and famous musicians, amongst many others, the great tenor saxophonist Lester Young, the great drummer Joe Jones, who, by the way, I just read a quote the other day about Joe Jones, and Max Roach said, every drummer who plays 3 riffs owes 5 of them to Joe Jones. Trumpeters Buck Clayton and Harry Sweets Edison, and the guitar master Freddie Green. One of his innovations was he would like to have 2 tenor saxophones both soloing back and forth like a duel in the band. He was the first to do that. Jumpin' at the Woodside, which is the song we're going to play tonight, was a big hit of his. It became his theme song. It was on number 11 on the charts for 4 weeks. It's a favorite and a definition of swing. And like many Basie numbers of that era, it was a head arrangement, which means the band themselves sort of created this song in rehearsal. So that's Count Basie. And then we're going to play a tune that features both, well, we think of both Chick Webb and Ella Fitzgerald, who used to play together. So I'll talk about Chick Webb first. So Chick Webb was this tiny little guy who was born with a deformity. All right, I'm not sure if he was born with it, he had an accident that caused a deformity. So you got to imagine, he was a tiny little guy and he was a drummer. So he had movement problems, right? He had trouble moving with his back and his spine, and yet he became one of the greatest drummers of his era. It's pretty inspiring. He also developed tuberculosis. So this was a sickly, crippled-looking person who was kicking it in New York on the drums, to the point where all the famous drummers talked about Chick Webb. We just talked about Gene Krupa, who they had a big band battle one time, and Gene Krupa spoke about how Chick Webb just cut him to shreds. So he was a little tiny guy, and he was known for innovative bass drum work, because in those days, drummers didn't use the bass drums very much except to play on the beat all the time. And he started making patterns and dropping different rhythms on the bass drum, and he would hit it so hard, this little tiny guy, they had to literally nail his bass drum to the stage. So he was a flamboyant guy. His band held sway at the Savoy, which was a club in New York, and it was one of 2 clubs. The other one was the Cotton Club, where people could go in the 30s and listen to jazz music in an integrated fashion. You gotta remember, this is back in the 30s. There was very little integration, and the idea that people could come together and listen to music together and dance together of different races was like a breakthrough. And one place that happened was the Cotton Club. That's where Duke Ellington's band played. That was for the wealthy people. Like, you had to have good money to go hang out in the Cotton Club. But for the average person and the poor people, they would go to the Savoy. And Chick Webb's band played at the Savoy for something like 14 years, I think. They held sway at the Savoy. And then he died young, because of his tuberculosis. So I just think of him as really indomitable spirit of Chick Webb. So Ella Fitzgerald was sort of discovered by Chick Webb. She won a contest in, at the Apollo. They used to have these contests where people came in, people clapped them off, booed them off the stage or clapped them forward, and she won one of those contests. And Chick Webb was looking for a singer at the time, and he, somebody suggested him, he heard her, and he was the first big name that she played with. And he wasn't sure if she was going to work out, so first he took her to like a little dance somewhere outside of the city. She did really well there, and so then he brought her to the Savoy, where she was a big hit. Ella Fitzgerald, all these people grew up in really abject poverty. Chick Webb came out of abject poverty, so did Ella Fitzgerald. She grew up singing in church and listening to many jazz artists such as Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, and her musical heroine was the Boswell sisters. She had a wild teenage period, and she found stability when she started to become known in the music world. She recorded a lot of hit songs with Chick Webb, and at that time they did a lot of like corny songs, but they became big hits. And one of those songs was A Tisket a Tasket, which was just a nursery rhyme. You probably all heard Ella Fitzgerald singing this song because it's really become like a very famous signature tune. And when you think about it, it's such a silly little song, but she really made it swing and brought the country to really love her and to love that music. And she had a long and very successful career. And now we're going to play Count Basie's Jumping at the Woodside, followed by Ella Fitzgerald, Tisket in a Tasket.
Nikki Paulino, ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Paulino. And now I'm here to give a little bit of information while we take a quick breather, readjust some things. Tune. Here is Captain Kevin Zanders, one of our administrators here. Captain Kevin Zanders.
Good evening. It's so good to see so many of you out here this evening. And don't they sound great? Well, I am the Associate Administrator of the Salvation Army Kroc Center here, and I am so glad that you came out on somewhat of a chilly spring night, right? But I'm glad that you're all here this evening. I'm just kind of curious, how many are here for the first time? Anybody? Oh, a bunch of you. All right, well, good. You might be trying to figure out what in the world is this place. Well, I will tell you that this place is a place of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And there's so many things that the Salvation Army Kroc Center offers people. And while they take the break, I was actually thinking I would take you on a tour. Can I take you on a tour? But here's the best part. You don't even have to get out of your seat to take this tour. Because if I took you on a tour through this building, the first thing that's going to happen is your feet are going to get tired from walking all 130,000 square feet of it. And I talk a lot, too. And it would take too long. But anyways, there's so many things that happen here. More than just arts and music, which is a big part of us. You're actually sitting in our chapel right now as we are a church, if you couldn't tell. And I think it's really cool that we can play jazz music in our chapel. And I really think Jesus would have been a jazz guy. If they had jazz music back then, I think he would have been, because he was kind of accepting of all. He was very practical, and he was unconventional all at the same time. I think that's jazz music, I think. Anyways, while they take a break, while you're here, we're going to take you on a virtual tour of our facility. And as the facility is beautiful, I would just encourage you to take a look at the faces and take a look at the smiles that you see on this video. And this video will basically show you just about everything that we do here. And if you want more information on it, please see one of us afterwards, or you can talk to someone at the membership service desk on your way out. But it's wonderful to see you here, and I hope you're having a great time.
So, before we play our next number here, I'd like to introduce you to a student of mine. Actually, he's a pretty good friend too, at least I think so. His name is Michael Levin, and he's in 7th grade. I was about to say 9th. Whew, okay. He's in 7th grade, and I've been teaching him clarinet for the last few weeks here, and I have to say, he's one exceptional student. And I like to feature a lot of my students when they come of age and they start to show a lot of good promise. And I have to tell you, Michael, as soon as I heard him first play, I was like, holy crap, Batman. I actually got to practice now. But seriously, though, I mean, he is quite exceptional, and you're going to hear that this evening. The tune that we're going to feature him on and our baritone saxophonist, Tony Toro, is a Glenn Miller tune entitled Moonlight Serenade. You can go ahead and take the rest of the week off, man. You don't need to practice over the weekend. It's cool. So I'm going to turn this microphone fun fest of education information over to our lead tenor saxophonist, Mr. Jordan Grave. Jordan.
And that's it. All right, we're going to play 2 tunes, and oh, you want me to talk more about it? You already clapped, so. Okay, that tune was by Glenn Miller. John told me to cut this a little short because I know we want to hear some tunes. So Glenn Miller played trombone. He played in the 30s and 40s with groups by Tommy Dorsey, Benny Goodman. Little known fact, his first band that he formed in 1937 broke up in under a year, and it's kind of weird because he was a best-selling artist from 1939 to 43, but it took him 2 tries. So there's always hope if something goes wrong the first time. So anyway, that tune, which Michael played beautifully, is the classic Miller sound, which is clarinet and 4 saxes instead of that big thing. Perfect, Tony's standing. A lot of times we have Barry sax, but for that one, the classic Miller thing is clarinet and the other 4 saxes here. So that's our little known classic Miller sound. Anyway, we're going to play In the Mood soon, but before that, I got to talk about Duke Ellington because we're going to play a tune his band played after that. He's credited with over 3,000 tunes that he wrote, which is a lot. He has a ton of awards. His band spanned a career of 50-plus years. He won the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1969. He got a posthumous Pulitzer Prize for his lifetime contributions to music and culture in 1999. And he's well known for doing a lot of classical music in a jazz style. Like if you've ever heard a jazzy version of the Nutcracker, there's a Brian Setzer one, but the original one was by Duke Ellington and his band. Yeah, I already told you we should play that for the Christmas concerts. The tune we're going to play is Moon Over Cuba, and was written by one of his trombone players, Juan Teasel, in 1939, before being arranged by Ellington and recorded in 1941. It's not commonly played, but it's one of his classic tunes. It was originally titled The Puerto Rican Girl, because Juan Teasel's from Puerto Rico. And some other tunes by Ellington, you might know Caravan or other things like that, but this is a great one that features a double clarinet thing. Ellington was really big on his reed players. That's the front row of us, the saxophones, playing a bunch of different things. You had flutes, piccolos, clarinets, bass clarinets, and everything. So Mr. DeToro down there on the end and I are going to play some clarinet, and we're going to hope and pray that it's as good as Michael did. But anyway, we're going to play Glenn Miller's In the Mood, followed by Duke Ellington's Moon Over Cuba.
Adam Kowalski on trombone, ladies and gentlemen. Adam Kowalski. Steve Dash, bass. Steve Dash on bass up front there. Just a few more introductions there. Jack Osmond on piano. AJ Yoon on guitar. Mr. Jerry Tannenbaum on kick. Terry Johnson, trumpet. Jerry Macalino, trumpet. Jason Holloway, wherever he's hiding. Hey, there he is. Jason Holloway, trumpet. Fred and Basie. I'm gonna get it. One day. Fred and Basie. Major Phil. Glenn DeGeorge. Mike Pollock. Tony DeToro. Josh Cooperstein on tenor. Craig Cerrito. And my name's John Gardner. The next two tunes we're going to do for you are two awesome vocal tunes, one coming from the Les Brown book. It had Doris Day in the band. And if you don't know who Doris Day is, Doris Day had that special sound. Every time you heard it, it was like, it's Christmas all over again. Either way, she starred in many films. Super lovely lady, amazing voice. We're going to be doing a tune of hers called Sentimental Journey. And then we're going to follow that up with On the Sunny Side of the Street by the other famous trombone player, Tommy Dorsey of the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. And what's interesting about Tommy Dorsey is that he was called the Sentimental Gentleman of Swing. And what that meant was that his tone was so rounded, so beautiful, and so, well, sultry. Let's go with that too. It was really round, very nice. It was warm, so easy to listen to him play. It was almost flawless every time he would play. I mean, anytime you see a trombone player, you see them going back and forth like this. Well, there's more than just the notes that are on the slide here. They also have to change the pitch too. And to have somebody such as Tommy Dorsey doing that without any problems at all, not even trying, that's simply unheard of. Either way, his band was so clean, so warm sounding, that he eventually became known as, like I said, the Sentimental Gentleman of Swing. Either way, we're going to be doing his tune On the Sunny Side of the Street. Both of these tunes are going to feature our fantastic vocalist, Miss Nikki Paulino.
Why did I decide?
row, the choir. So as you've seen tonight, we've taken definitely a quote-unquote sentimental journey. Sorry, I had to get one bad joke. I know. Hey, I want the Minecraft sounds, okay? 8-bit, 8-bit. So as you've seen tonight, we've taken a different, well, journey, as it were, than what we usually do here. We started off with a much simpler style of swing where it was very, I don't want to say square, but it kind of was, a little bit cheesy, a little bit chintzy. But then afterwards, it started to kind of get a little bit more, in the pocket, just really sitting there grooving hard. The swing style really started to expand, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And around 1945, the bebop era started to take shape. Soloists wanted to play a little bit more. They wanted to expose their ideas to audiences and see what they would do, the different reactions. People got tired, at least instrumentalists, they got tired of playing the same stuff over and over and over again. So what ended up happening is a couple of people, I don't know, like a Charlie Parker maybe, and a Dizzy Gillespie. I know, exactly. Famous alto saxophonist and a famous trumpeter. The guy with the weird-looking bell and when he plays, the big giant cheeks. They started bebopping around. They started playing with different ideas, expanding the solo idiom. They started going further and further and pushing the actual art a little bit more. So tonight, to end off the concert, we're going to play 2 more numbers for you. The first number we're going to play is The Stars and Stripes Forever, arranged by Dave Wolpe. We play this tonight in honor of all of our veterans that are serving right now, as well as those that have served. And if you have served while this tune is playing, if you wouldn't mind standing so we could acknowledge you, that'd be great. If you're not able to, that's also okay too. But at this point in time, I feel it is appropriate that we do give you a round of applause in appreciation for you. So again, thank you very much again for your service. So that's the first tune we're going to play before we end the concert. And the final tune, to end it for the night, we're going to play Dizzy Gillespie's famous tune from 1947, Manteca. And it's going to feature many different players in the band. It's a little bit different than what we're used to, at least right now for this concert. But you can see the direction that jazz is starting to go. Again, thank you very much for coming out this evening. Thank you again for supporting the arts. And let's kill it with these 2 tunes. Here we go. Mr. Michael Lemon. Jerry Tannenbaum on drums. Jason Holloway, trumpet. Jerry Macolino, trumpet. Jordan Grace, tenor saxophone. And AJ Yoon on guitar. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Philly Kroc Jazz Orchestra. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Have a safe night. And happy Jazz Appreciation Month. Take care. Thank you.